Good afternoon, everybody. This lecture will be delivered by Dan Ariely. He is one of the first of the two chairs of the Joep Lange Institute. And I think I do not need to introduce the Joep Lange Institute. It is an institute that has been erected in the remembrance of Joep Lange and Jacqueline van Tongeren, who died during a tragic flight accident. You're well aware of that. And due to many very generous supporters, both in the Netherlands and both in other countries, we have been able to develop the Joep Lange Institute to start a very nice program. And part of this is the nomination of chairs, and one of these chairs is Dan Ariely. He's going to do a lot of things. He is doing a lot of things. He is professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University. But I think that's nice, of course. But I think the things that is really nice is that you are the founding member of the Institute for Advanced Hindsight. And that's something that we can really use nowadays. I'm not sure you're going to speak about that. You're going to speak, hopefully, about your work for the Joep Lange Institute, studying decision-making in Kenya and maybe other countries in the world surrounding choices that people make for healthcare, a highly interesting subject. I think, Danny, very much, I'd like to thank you very much for coming here, for accepting to be one of the first chairs of the Joep Lange Institute, and for giving this lecture.
Thank you. So, to celebrate this important day, and in tribute to American political system, women are not allowed to ask any questions. And I want all minority members to leave now. Terrible, 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 terrible day. Okay. The one good point about today is nobody can argue anymore that people think long-term or in their self-interest or make rational choices. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about what causes us to behave well and what kind of things cause us to behave not so well. So let's think about what drives people behavior. We had a meeting this morning with a group of physicians, and if you ask people what drives behavior, what are kind of the big drivers of human behavior, people say things like objectives, goals, aspirations, right? You talk to people and they have like a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 7-year plan. People have these goals, and that really drives their behavior. The sad reality, bless you, is that this is not the case. That it's true that when you talk to people, they say that they have goals, objectives, aspirations, but the effect of those things on people's lives is tiny. It's tiny. And it's not as if we don't know what's the right behavior. We often know what's the right thing to do, we just don't do it. So let's just have a little bit of introspection exercise about our own lives. So, in the last month, how many of you have eaten more than you think you should? Just kind of a general, okay? In the last month, how many of you have exercised less than you think you should? Okay. In the last year, let's say, how many of you texted while driving? Okay, now since this is Holland, let's also add texting while cycling. Okay, now. By the way, it's just as stupid, maybe even more than doing it while you drive. 2 more questions. How many of you in the last month have not always washed your hands when you left the bathroom? You know what, like this is kind of an honest group, that's kind of nice. But in the US, by the way, physicians wash their hands about half the time when they move from one patient to another. I'm sure in Holland it's much, much better. And of course, lots of people die as a consequence of that. And now really last question, how many of you have ever had unplanned, unprotected sex? Okay. It's probably more than the people who are raising their hands, but at least, there's some some honesty in the group. Now, let's think about all of those behaviors. Let's think about something like texting and driving. It's not as if people make trade-offs. It's not as if kind of the phone vibrates, you're driving or you're cycling, the phone vibrates next to you and you say to yourself, let me think about it. How much do I want to stay alive? How much do I don't want to kill other people? How important is this text message right now? And you weigh the options and you say, yes, let me do that. No, you know it's a stupid idea. There's no question it's a stupid idea. But when the phone vibrates, you become a slightly different person. You focus on the here and now and you don't think even short-term into the future. Let's think about this question in a more general way. Imagine that I gave you a choice between 2 boxes of chocolate. I usually use Belgian chocolate as an example. Let's just assume it's good chocolate. Imagine I gave you a choice between a half a pound of a chocolate right now or a full pound in a week. Half now or full in a week. And I say, which one do you want? And it's not hypothetical. I pass the chocolate around and you could smell it. It's just amazing, like the best chocolate in the world. When you give people this choice, most people say, give me the half a pound of chocolate right now, not worthwhile to wait another week for another half a pound of chocolate. What if we push the choices to the future? And we say, what would you rather have? A half a pound of chocolate in a year or a full pound in a year and a week? It's the same question. It's asking you whether you're willing to wait another week for another half a box of chocolate. But when we asked about long-term in the future, everybody waits. By the way, at some point, you'll be in the same position. I could have had it now. Right? Because in the future, we are just wonderful people. We will exercise, we will diet. The future is full of wonderful things. We never get to live in that future. We get to live in the present, and in the present, we get tempted time after time after time. And by the way, the temptation industry is only getting better. Right? Think about it. Donuts. How good are they in terms of tempting us? Really very good. And in 3 years from now, the next version of the donut, will it be more tempting or less tempting? It will be more tempting. Facebook. Oh, by the way, how many of you think you use Facebook too often? Is Facebook going to be more effective in tempting us or less effective? More effective, because that's their goal. Their goal is not to make you be a productive citizen in 30 years. Their goal is to get you to check Facebook once more today. So there's lots of things that we know what the answer is. We just tempted to misbehave on a continuous basis. And just to be clear, this is killing us. There was a study that looked at American mortality and asked the question of what is the percentage of mortality in the US that is accelerated because of bad decisions. And they estimated that about 100 years ago, it was about 10%. And now, it's about 44%. How come? What happened? As we invent new technologies, we also invent new ways to kill ourselves. Smoking, obesity, diabetes, texting and driving, right? All of those are basically about, texting while driving is one thing, but if you think about obesity, for example, it's not that you make one bad decision that would kill you, but we're tempted day after day after day, and it's the consequence of this set of decisions that is killing us. And by the way, these temptations is basically the biggest barrier to health. Yes, there's lots of things in health that we just don't have a solution for. But there's a lot of things in health that we have the solution for, but what's really bogging us down is behavior. Right? So think about something like getting people to eat healthy. Is it a medical problem? It's a behavioral problem. I mean, you could decide where it is. Diabetes. Medications are quite good if we could only get people to take them. Hypertension, similar things, right? How do we get people to behave well? Okay. So I want to play you a little song. Oh. Okay. I muted it. That's not good. Okay, I want you to dance.
Set fire to your hair, poke a stick at a grizzly bear.
Come on.
Eat medicine that's out of date. Use your private parts as piranha bait. Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Get your toast out with a fork. Do your own electrical work. Teach yourself how to fly. Eat a 2-week-old unrefrigerated pie. Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Invite a psycho killer inside. Scratch a drug dealer's brand new ride. Take your helmet off in outer space. Use a clothes dryer as a hiding place. Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Keep a rattlesnake as a pet. Sell both your kidneys on the internet. Eat a tube of super glue. I wonder, what's this red button do? Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Dress up like a moose during hunting season. Disturb a nest of wasps for no good reason. Stand on the edge of a train station platform. Drive around the boom gates at a level crossing. Run across the tracks between the platforms. They may not rhyme, but they're quite possibly the dumbest ways to die. The dumbest ways to die. The dumbest ways to die. So many dumb ways to die.
Be safe around trains. A message from Metro.
By the way, they show lots of low likelihood ways of dying that are, of course, dumb. But if you think about what really kills us, it's these things that we do all the time, right? It's not, the probability of dying from electrifying ourselves is not that high. The probability of accelerating death by eating badly, smoking, and so on, much, much higher. Okay, so so life is tough, temptation is tough. Next, I want to look at some general behaviors and ask, are we successful? What can we be proud of? As a human race, what have we done well? What kind of behaviors are we doing well? So let me actually ask you, what kind of things have we done well? What would you say we should be proud of in terms of healthy behaviors? Vaccinations, very good. It's getting worse, and somehow the most advanced, left-wing Birkenstock wearing people are doing worse on this. But in general, it's good. What else? Sanitation? You mean from a city perspective or from an individual perspective? The city perspective, of course. I want like individual behavior. Sex? You mean we invented new. Oh, we have more people around. Yeah, I'm not sure we should be proud of 7.5 billion, but what else? Seatbelt is amazing, right? Seatbelt is amazing, right? We have basically started wearing seatbelts not too long ago, and compliance rate is very, very high in most places. How did we get there? What was the key with seatbelts to get people to wear seatbelts? Was it knowledge? Did we tell people, hey, this is dangerous? There was fines. What else? There was the annoying noise from the car, right? And there were kids in the back that were telling their parents, why are you tying me and not you? the other thing about seatbelt is it habit creating, because you feel something, right? And that feeling, if you go now into a car and you don't have it, you don't feel, so you feel something is good. So it has a built-in reminder, right? Which lots of other things don't. What else? What else would you say we're proud of? Ski helmets, absolutely. Toothbrushing is amazing. Like toothbrushing is like the biggest success, I think, of healthcare, right? Just amazing. The percentage of people who brush their teeth is amazing. Now, how do you think we got there? Why is toothbrushing so successful and so many other things we fail on? Sorry? It's habitual. It is in the same time, it's habitual. What else? The alternative is pretty green, but which alternative are you thinking about? Oh, the sticks. No, but you don't have to brush at all. You don't have to brush with the stick. Tastes good. Yes, yes. It turns out that we really don't brush for the right reason. What would be the right reason to brush? That we care about the health of our teeth in 10 years from now. But why do we brush? Because we want to be socially acceptable. Right? Procter & Gamble, in their infinite wisdom, convinced us that unless we feel minty fresh, something is wrong with us, and other people are going to react negatively to us. And we don't brush because we care about our teeth. We brush in the morning because we say, I'm kind of socially unacceptable. And I need to become socially acceptable, so let me brush. This is, by the way, why flossing has been so difficult, right? Because by the time you brush, you have all the mint that you need. Like the little mint on the floss, like that's not an interesting thing. By the way, we call this reward substitution. This idea that we do the right thing for the wrong reason. We brush not for the essence of it, for brushing. We brush because we crave mint. By the way, how many of you now, since we talked about toothbrushing, are filling your teeth and saying, do I need some mint right now? I'm a little bit behind. And what else? What else would you say we're good at? There's really not that much, right? Really not that much. Now, what are we not so good at? So we talked about dieting, we mentioned texting and driving and so on. Another one, of course, is medication adherence. Right? Medication adherence it's a huge problem. And I want to tell you a personal story of myself and medication adherence. So as you can see, I was badly burned a long time ago. I was in hospital for a long time. And one of the things I got in hospital was hepatitis C. I got a bad blood transfusion with hepatitis C. At the time, they didn't know it was hepatitis C. They just knew I had non-A, non-B hepatitis. And, you know, it kept on coming up and going away, coming up and going away. And quite a few years later, I was already in grad school. I had another episode. I checked myself into the hospital, and they told me I had hepatitis C. By that time, they could identify the virus. And they asked me if I want to join an FDA protocol to test whether interferon and ribavirin together are going to be effective for dealing with hep C. And I said, what happens if I don't? And they described to me what it feels like to die from liver cirrhosis. So I joined the protocol. And here was the dilemma. If you know interferon, it's a terrible medication. I mean, it's a very effective medication for some things, but it has lots of side effects. Vomiting, headache, shaking, stuff like that. Not as bad as dying from liver cirrhosis, but for sure, and tonight. So imagine you come home from the university, you open the refrigerator, you have all of these injections. In principle, if I would take my medications 3 times a week for a year and a half, I might not have liver cirrhosis 30 years later, but for sure I'll have a miserable night, right? And that's the essence of the self-control problem. Anyway, fast forward a year and a half, I have another liver biopsy, I beat the disease. As you know, there are much better medications now for hep C. But my physician, Dr. Killenberg, told me I was the only patient in the protocol that took the medication on time. And the question is, how come? Do I love my liver more than other people love their livers? Am I more rational? Do I think differently about problems? The answer is no to all of those. The answer was that I changed something in my environment. And what I did was I had a deal with myself that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which were injection days, first thing in the morning I would go to a video store. I would rent a few videos I really wanted to watch. I would carry them in my backpack the whole day looking forward to watching them. I would come home, I would put the video in, I would inject myself, and I would start watching. I did not wait for the side effects to start. I connected something I did not want, the injection, with something I wanted, the videos. Now, if you think about it, it's kind of crazy, right? Because if you ask me, what would you rather have, a liver or movies? Of course, I would give up movies in a heartbeat. But the effect of the liver was going to be in 30 years from now. And because it's so delayed, its motivational force is actually very low. The movies were right now. And this is the whole point of reward substitution, is that there are some things that are a little bit too delayed for people to care about. In general, like the chocolate in a year and so on, we don't care so much about the future, we care about the present. And healthcare effects, many of them are about the really distant future, right? It's not that we're doing something now that we'll see the results tomorrow. It will be something that will translate to something long in the future, and we're just not that motivated by anything long-term in the future. So reward substitution is the idea that we do something now that causes us to behave as if we want to do something, as if we care about the future goal, right? So I do something toward movie, behaving as if I care about my long-term view. Let me give you one example from this. There's a couple of studies on internet-enabled pillboxes. Right? If you think about reward substitution, what you need for reward substitution is to measure what people are doing and then give them a positive reward if they're behaving well and a negative punishment if they behave badly. How do we measure? We have internet-enabled pillboxes. These are pillboxes if you open, we measure, we know that you're taking your pill. So imagine you have a group of people on some medication and you have internet-enabled pillboxes. You can either give them a positive reward or you can punish them. What kind of things would you try? What kind of things would you try to give them as either positive or negative? Sorry? Cash. Give them money, right? Let's bribe people. What else? So personal attention, say more, like if they take your medication, you do what? Compliments. Compliments are very good. Yeah, compliments are great. By the way, we have an app called Attaboy that gives people random compliments. It's great. Every time you feel bad, you ask for one. I got a great one yesterday. I really needed something. Compliments, great. What else? Block Facebook. So something negative, right? Punish them by something else that they want. Great. What else? We have shame, we have pride, we have competition. There's lots of things. Okay, let me describe to you a couple of experiments. So in the first experiment, we tried to get people to take their medications, and we paid people $3 a day to take their medications. What do you think happened? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. What do you think would happen if we paid people $1,000 a day? That should work. We didn't test it. And we didn't test it because, of course, at some point you could bribe people to do whatever you want, but if you're doing it with so much money, it's just irrelevant from an applied perspective. So then we said, okay, we can't spend more than $3. $3 is all we have. How do we pay people $3 but make it feel like it's more? So the first thing we tried was the principle of loss aversion. Loss aversion is the idea that people hate losing more than we enjoy gaining. So we said, what if we charge people $3 every time they don't take the medication on time? As you can imagine, we had a little bit run-in with the IRB, with the Human Subject Committee. They did not want us to charge people, but what they allow us to do was to prepay people as if they took the medication for 3 months and then take money back. It's not the same, but even that worked better. But an even nicer version was done by George Lowenstein and Kevin Volpe, and they did 2 things at the same time. The first thing they did was to use lotteries. Lotteries, as you know, are incredibly tempting, and mostly we use them for terrible things in society, like state-funded lotteries, which you, I think, have, which is, kind of reprehensible morally. But you can also use lotteries for good things, right? So what happens if you give people, instead of $3 a day, you give them 10% chance of making $30? That works better, right? People love lotteries. But they did not stop there. They took lotteries, and they also added to it regret. Now, think about it. What is regret? When do we experience regret? Regret is about the fact that our happiness is not driven from where we are. It's driven by a contrast between where we are and where we could have been. And if we think we could have been somewhere better, we're miserable. And if we think we could have been somewhere worse, we're happy. For example, when would you be more unhappy? If you missed your flight by 2 minutes or by 2 hours? 2 minutes. Why? Because you just finished running to the gate and you see the plane leaving, and 7A, you can just see the seat and you can say, I could have been there. Say, I could have been there. If the person in line in front of me understood the words no liquids, I would have been there. If the KLM agent had 2 more IQ points, I would have been there. So you have all kinds of ways in which you said, if only I could have been there. What happens if you're 2 hours late? There's not if only. So in one case, you have your reality, and you have something so close to compare it to. There was also a study that looked at people who won medals in the Olympic, and look how big was their smile. So what would you think? Gold, silver, bronze? No. Gold, bronze, silver. Think about it. Imagine that you woke up extra early every day for the last 4 years, and you did whatever you do, and 90 seconds ago you got second place. What is the thought you can't help but having? If only. You remember that Wednesday last week when I cut my thing short, I didn't do X, I didn't do Y, if only I did that. And if you got the bronze, what are you saying to yourself? At least I'm here. Look at everybody else. So how do you bring regret to the experiment? Imagine all of you are on Coumadin, all of you are part of the experiment. Half of you are taking the medication, half of you are not. If we do a regular lottery, I take the people who took the medication and give 10% of your lottery tickets. If I do what we call regret lottery, I give tickets to everybody. I give in the morning tickets to everybody and say, this, you might be the winner. And then in the evening, I call you up and I say, congratulations, you're the winner of the coveted lottery. The stars are smiling on you. Your day in the sun. Congratulations. Sadly, I see you did not take your pill, so you're not getting the money. This is the essence of regret. Now, Case can think about a small thing he could have done earlier in the day, not to put him in the same situation, and he would not do it again. And the results basically show that compliance to Coumadin goes from the low 60% to the high 90% with these interventions. So when we look at behavior in general, we can say people just don't behave as if they care about their long-term well-being, which is true, but we don't have to give up. We can add all kinds of other incentives to the mix, and we can get people to behave better. I want to give you two more examples. This, as you know, is one of the issues facing Holland these days, the question of organ donation. Right? So you must have seen this plot before. This is a plot that shows the percentage of people in different countries of Europe who are basically signing the organ donation or not. And when you look at this list, you see countries that give a lot and countries that give a little. Holland, by the way, you're the highest giver in the low-giving countries. You can decide how you want to think about this. You also had this crazy reality TV show where people who were supposedly about to die could decide who they want to donate their organs to. So there's some crazy, interesting fascination with the topic. But in any case, as you know, the difference between the countries that give and the countries that don't give have nothing to do with preferences, with ideology, with religion, with the law. It has to do with the enrollment form. If you show up to the place where you sign up for enrollment and you get the form that says check the box if you want to participate, what do people do? Nothing. They don't check and they don't participate. If you get a form that says check the box if you don't want to participate, people do the same thing. They do nothing, but now they participate. And this, of course, we call opt-in and opt-out. So what we have is that goals and intentions and so on don't seem to matter much. What matters much are lots of small details in life. And you'll excuse my observation, I'm not in the medical field, but from my experience with medicine, physicians are often concerned with patients' overall motivation and goals and information, and they know very little about the little details of their lives. Right? So if you ask the question, for example, where do you put the pill box? Might be more important than the question of, do you understand what HDL means? Or do you know what your level is? Think about this enrollment form. This is what's called choice architecture. If you design the environment correctly so that the good behavior is the easiest one to follow, there's a much better chance that people would act well, versus just knowing something is no guarantee. I'll give you one final example for this. And I'll give you an example from the financial domain. Oh, okay. I have some other nice examples, but we'll. So this is a plot that shows all the research ever to be done on financial literacy. These are all the attempts that were ever carried out together about trying to teach people about financial decision making. And by the way, when you teach people about financial decision making, they remember. They remember and they can repeat it, some of it, not everything. But the question, of course, is not just what people know, what do they execute? And what you see is that it's about 3 or 4% improvement in execution. It's very, very small. Right? This, by the way, in the US, we spend between $700 and $800 million a year teaching people how to deal with their money, and the improvements are tiny. And this is an optimistic picture. Why? Because the data is worse for people with low socioeconomic status, and these are the measures of the immediate effect. It actually goes down over time. In total, it's estimated that all the interventions to improve financial literacy improved outcomes by 0.1%. Huge amount of money for basically no benefit. And this is because information rarely helps in changing behavior. In fact, I would love for you to give me one example in human history where it was pure information, nothing else, that got people to change behavior. Where you say, oh my goodness, texting and driving is dangerous. Why didn't anybody tell me? And we just change. Or you say, oh, calorie information. Oh, here it is. Let me change my behavior. Just no evidence. There's just no evidence that telling people something changes behavior over time. So what can we do instead? So I'll give you one final example. This is a study we did in Islam in Kenya called Kibera. We tried to get very poor people to save a little bit of money. And the reason we wanted them to save money is so they have a small cushion. So if bad things happen, they have money to spend if they get sick or they lose some income or something like that, rather than having to borrow in a very high interest rate and deteriorating. And we created a system where people could text money into that system easily using M-Pesa, the online payment system, but they had a hard time getting the money out. So what we did was people could text the money in, but every night the money moved to an investment bank. And once it was invested in the Kenyan stock market, it just takes some time to take it out. They had to take a bus, go to the city, submit the form, wait an hour, get the money, take a bus back. And we did this on purpose because we wanted them to be able to access the money if there was an emergency, but we didn't want everything to be an emergency. If you walk around with a little bit of cash in Kibera, everything looks like an emergency. You see a piece of fruit, it's an emergency. You see a bit more water, it's an emergency, right? Life is tempting. So we gave this system to lots of people, and then we added things on top of it. One group, we texted once a week and say, try and save 100 shillings, about 90 cents this week. One group got the same text message, but as if it came from their kids. Hi mom, hi dad, this is little Joey, whatever the name of the kid was, try and save 100 shillings this week. Another group got a 10% match. Save up to 100 shillings, we'll give you 10%. Another group got a 20% match. Save up to 100 shillings, we'll give you 20%. Two other groups also got 10% and 20%, but they got what we call pre-matching. We mentioned the principle of loss aversion, that people hate losing more than we enjoy gaining. We said, what if we gave them 10% or the 20%, the 10 shilling or the 20 shillings in the beginning of the week? And if they saved, they got to keep it. If not, we took it back. So financially, it's the same thing. If you save 50, you get 5 in a 10% condition. But in the second condition, with the loss aversion, you see 5 shilling leaves your account. And then the final group, we created a little coin about this size with numbers on it, 24 numbers for the 24 weeks of the program. We asked them to put the coin somewhere visible in the hut. And every week we said, this is week 1, take a knife, scratch the coin this way if you didn't save, and this way if you saved. So, just as a test of your intuition, which condition do you think created the highest level of savings? Let's get a little vote. How many people think that the plain coin created the highest level of saving? The plain coin. Okay, how many people think that 10% at the end of the week created the highest level of saving? 20% at the end of the week? 10% in the beginning of the week with loss aversion? 20% with loss aversion? The regular text message? Text message from the kids. Yeah. Usually it's the people with no kids who think that that might work. Here is what happened. By the way, when we do an intuition study and we ask people to predict the results, not people who come to a lecture on decision making, but when we ask people to predict, people think that the financial incentives will matter a lot, that they don't think that loss aversion will matter, and they think that 20% is much, much more important than 10%. What actually happened? Giving the system to people in general helps create some savings. A weekly text reminder helps a lot. A reminder plus 10% at the end of the week helps a little bit more. 20% at the end of the week, just like 10%, no difference. 10% beginning of the week, loss aversion helps some more. 20%, just like 10%. Again, loss aversion helps, but 10 or 20% doesn't matter. And kids were the same as 20% plus loss aversion, which is kind of amazing, right? That just reminding people about their kids actually changes things dramatically. But the big surprise was the coin, because the coin doubled savings compared to everything else. And you can ask yourself, why? What was so special about the coin? So here's the thing. When we look at the days of the week, we texted everybody on Friday and people saved on Friday. And the coin was tiny bit better on Friday. The main benefit of the coin was all the other days of the week. It was all about having a reminder. Think about it. When do you think about savings? When do you do your work, whatever you do, and all of a sudden you say, hey, let me spend some time thinking about saving right now? Doesn't happen. When is the environment reminds you about saving? Very rarely. In fact, if the environment reminds you about anything, it reminds you about spending. You see all the stuff you want, not the stuff you want to. All of a sudden, we gave people something in their environment that from time to time reminded them about saving, and from time to time, they saved. So what's the point? The point is that human motivation is incredibly complex. We usually think that it's about overarching goals, long-term thinking, and about information. And if people are not behaving well, it's only because they're uninformed. Maybe we'll find some cases like this one day. Most cases are not like that. In most cases, we have to think about the small details of life. We have to think, what is it that people are not doing right now, and how do we change people's understanding at the moment? How do we make the right behavior the easiest one to do? How do we change people's priorities? How do we create habits? How do we actually get into the small details of life and therefore getting people to behave differently? So sadly, we're out of time. I think we have about 10 minutes or so, right? For questions.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Thanks a lot for this inspiring lecture. I think with the audience of a lot of medical students and doctors, hopefully we have some food for thought, and hopefully you've shaken their perceptions and beliefs a little bit. Indeed, we have a few questions. We ask people to submit a question to you while registering, and we selected some of them. But being in my position is very good because I actually get to ask the first question myself. So we've been now on a trip for 1 week. We had the workshop this morning, and I'm trained as a medical doctor. And what struck me most actually in the last week is the finding that just giving information is not going to change any behavior. Now, during my medical training, also as a resident, all sort of training in interactions with patients is about how to best give information. So how to tell your patients about prognosis, about treatment, how to tell them about risk, how to tell them what they should aim for. And it's nothing about changing their everyday life. So my question is, what should we change in the medical curriculum to make doctors more successful in changing behavior, and where should we start?
By the way, it is kind of shocking, because if you're a practicing physician, you have a ton of experience telling people to do stuff and knowing that they don't do it. Like, you know, how, and nevertheless, people kind of just keeping doing the same thing. It's kind of shocking, right? You say, and they do it again. And it's kind of, maybe they're a little bit disheartened to say the same thing over and over, but physicians have not really tried the whole range of things. Now, I think what we need to do is look, I don't expect physicians to become experts in behavioral change. It's not your field. You should not expect me to be an expert in medicine, and I should not expect you to become experts in medical change, in behavioral change. But I do think that we need to get these two literature closer together, and the people in the behavioral change need to do stuff that is in the medical domain. So, you know, we do lots of things on eating. We do lots of things on exercising. There's lots of ways to get people to change. But how do we get those methods in an easy way to physicians? I mean, one of the challenging thing, I'm not sure about people who practice in Holland. In the US, often physicians have 15 minutes to deal with a patient. It's not really a good time to start saying, okay, let's start discussing how your refrigerator is structured and your shopping list and so on. So we need some easy tools to give physicians something that would help them create behavioral change. And I think some candidates are, how do you as a physician change people's shopping lists for what they're going to buy? Calendars. We did a lot of research on how writing things on people's calendars get people to behave differently. I mean, think to yourself, how many of you are calendar types that you basically look at your calendar and you do what you're told? Right? This is called implementation intention. If you have something in your calendar, it's a part of your intention for the day, and there's a good chance you'll do it. So we just started writing things in people's calendars. Drink water, read, call your mother. I mean, we did all kinds of things, and you put things on people's calendar and people start doing it. But think about the difference in perspective. There's one thing that says you sit with a patient and you get control over their calendar and you send them a regime of what they're going to do and when they're going to walk and when they're going to shop, and you control their shopping list, and they become accountable. Very different approach. So I would say we need to do more studies, and physicians need easy tools to implement detailed plans for behavioral change. Okay, thanks. Okay, so the questions from the audience. The first one is from Iris van der Heijden. I don't know where she is. Can you stand up? Yeah, here. Okay. She has a mic.
Hello. Oh, yeah, it's working. Yes, thank you for the nice lecture. I have a question. Is there a difference in how to address behavior change among people with lower socioeconomic status compared to people with a higher socioeconomic status?
So, there's lots of things we don't know about people who live in poverty. The one thing we know is that they have a much more complex lives. And not only do they have a much more complex lives, they have what we call depletion. So Rob Baumeister talks about depletion like a muscle. That you make difficult decisions, and you make difficult decisions, you resist temptation, at some point you have just no more capacity and you give up. Right? This is why the temptation industry is most successful at night. We're kind of tired, resisting temptation, we're ready to fail. And if you're poor, you're kind of almost depleted all the time, right? So you basically have to make a decision. Do I take a bus or do I have breakfast? Do I pay for my medication or do I have lunch? Do I have dinner? All of these tough decisions, which have a lot to do with delayed gratification and self-control, basically depletes people. So if you think about a range between giving people lots of control over their behaviors versus kind of almost forcing people to do what's good for them, as people have less time and less capacity, we need to think about mechanisms that make it even easier to do the right thing, right? So if you talk about somebody with high social economic status and they buy cheesecake, they'll probably make a mistake, but they'll probably also be able to exhibit some self-control. As you move to people who have harder and harder time with self-control, not because it's their personality and not because it's them, it's because they have exhausting lives, right? The temptation is much more likely to be effective. So I think that the people we need to help the most are the people who are actually the most exhausted. And if you think about things like habits and religion, what habits and religions do is to take decision out of the equation. You just do something out of habit or outside of a religious belief. And the benefit of habits and religion will probably be higher for people with, who are depleted, basically. So if I had to pick, I would take those solutions and try to emphasize them for the poor in general.
Thanks. So the next one is from Yvette Hendricks. There's one coming.
Well, again, thank you for your very nice lecture. I saw your documentary, The Truth About Lying, and you said also today that we are tempted to make bad decisions to fool ourselves with lying also. And how do you think lying of patients or doctors can benefit them, or do you think it'll only hurt them in the end?
Okay, so I've done lots of research on dishonesty. We don't have time to get into it. I think the movie is quite nice, isn't it? It's somebody else is the producer and director, so I'm not complimenting myself. But we did a study, just a pilot study, and we went with doctors into a meeting where they were giving patients bad news, and then we talked to the doctor, the family, and the patient. And if you just look at the transcript of those discussions of what they said afterward, it's as if they were not in the same room. It's very hard to come to somebody and say, you're going to die. It's just really tough. It's inhumane, I think, to say it. So if you think about, I don't know, what's the worst news that somebody who's not a physician delivers? You break up with a romantic partner, you fire somebody. But, in both of those cases, there's like a day which will be over, right? If you're breaking up with a romantic partner, tomorrow they're not going to be there. It's like clear. But breaking bad news, there's all kind of low probability events. And the doctors kind of, in our study, kind of talked in metaphors and suggestions and so on, but they didn't say things exactly. And the patients on their side also don't want to understand exactly. It's painful. So I think there's lots of dishonesty and kind of on all sides in the discussion. How much of it is healthy because of motivation and so on, and how much of it is wasteful? For example, I have quite a few oncologist friends who told me that sometimes they give unnecessary treatments to patients just because they can't tell them that there's really nothing else to do. They can't stomach saying that, so they get them to another round of chemotherapy, which is just wasteful. So I don't have a good answer for you, but I think that trying to understand where in medicine a little bit of wishful thinking and a little bit of kind of beautifying reality is okay, and what are the cases where it's just create damage, I think we need to think about it more systematically. And I don't think we need to leave it to each physician to figure out by themselves. It's just too difficult.
Okay, last question is from Aletta Jansen. Yeah.
Hi. So mine is question is a little bit idealistic. If you could share or teach everyone in the world right now one thing about human behavior, what would it be?
If I could teach everybody one thing about human behavior, I had a friend that we did an exercise of saying, if you could give everybody in the world a gift, what would it be? And she said MDMA, which I think is not a bad idea, especially if you could all have it in the same day and have kind of increased empathy. But you know, the question about teaching something is difficult, because I don't think that always teaching translates into action. But if I could get people to try and overcome one big issue, I think it will be about how to override temptation. You know, temptation is everywhere, and if you think about for companies, imagine that a company could come to you and they could give you a logical argument of why you should buy whatever they're selling, or they could go through emotions. Emotions are just providing an easier path. So we've created a system where there's a lot of incentives to try and appeal to the primitive, immediate aspect of ourselves. And it is completely counter to living long, right? So if we lived for a shorter time, that will be fine. But as we live longer, and we have many years after retirement, hopefully, those things are really terrible. So, kind of a direction. And I want to end by telling you, I have a son and a daughter. My son is 14, my daughter is 10, and I just want to share with you my daughter's favorite joke. I hope it's okay. It's a 10-year-old joke, but okay. Americans have realized that one of the challenges with American politics is that there's lots of lying. So they invented a mirror that if a politician passes by and they say the truth, they walk by. And if they passes by and they say a lie, the mirror sucks them in. So they put this mirror in Washington, D.C., and Barack Obama passes by, and he says, I think my healthcare plan is going to save millions of Americans. Keeps on walking. Hillary Clinton passes by, and she said, if I would be the president, I would be a better president than my husband. She's gone. Bernie Sanders passes by, and he says, I think the main problem with American politics, with American society, is inequality. And he keeps on walking. Donald Trump passes by, and he says, I think...
So thanks a lot, Dan. Thanks for being here with us today and the last week in Kenya. It was really inspiring for all of us. We hope you'll be back soon as part of your JLI chair, and with an idiot running the country. And from now on, you're welcome in Europe. For the time being, because you don't know how it will go here. We have a little present for you as a souvenir from Amsterdam. This is for you. Thanks a lot. Huh? So I would also like to thank Marcel Levy for opening the lecture today. I would like to thank our musicians who did a great opening. And I would like to thank Sabina Beke, who doesn't like to be in front, but she organized everything. And last but not least, I want to thank you all for being here, and I really hope you will join us in the next Joep Lange Institute event again. And for now, there's some drinks outside. Thanks a lot.